this is a topic that I am very personally attached to. I have been wanting to talk about bringing breeders and veterinarians together for a very long time. I had approached actually Dr. Greer about this topic at VMX this year. She and I were walking, she was coming up the breezeway and I attacked her. And I said, Marty, I just had a conversation with one of our supporters and they said, can you bring a topic about breeders forward? And immediately Marty was like, then we need to have Debra involved. And so this, swear or not, Debra, you may not have even known that, but this has been in the development work since January. This has been something we've been wanting to talk about. So it is with my pristine honor that I am able to bring forth Dr. Marty Greer and Debra Hamilton. I will have them both explain their backgrounds. First of all, I will say as a disclaimer that, not as a disclaimer, but more as an emphasis of their expertise. These two are the foremost authorities in their individual fields, and they bring so much to breeders. So I want them to both kind of brag about themselves. So Marty, let's have you explain who you are, and then let's have you go into the toast, and then we'll move it on over.
Sure. So I'm a small animal practitioner. I graduated from Iowa State in 1981. So I've been in practice.
I didn't know that either. Oh,
yeah. I've been in practice for almost 38 years. Almost from the beginning. My first year out of school, I worked at an emergency clinic, and then I started a veterinary clinic a year out of school. I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about what I was doing. And almost from the beginning, breeders found us as a veterinarian to seek out services from, because we were willing to talk to breeders and work with breeders. And when I was a little kid, I grew up next door to some corgis, and I always wanted a corgi. So 25 years later, I finally got my first one after I had 2 kids. So I had a little corgi, and I went with the expectation of buying a little pet dog, and suddenly I bought a show dog. I didn't plan to, but by the time I left the breeder's house, I'd signed a contract, and I bought a show dog. And suddenly I had not only a breeding dog, but a show dog as well. So suddenly when you are the veterinarian that breeds and shows, then you become the veterinarian that will also do reproductive services. About 15 years ago, we expanded those services into semen freezing, and I was told by the company I was freezing for that it would change my practice, and boy, they weren't kidding. We went from a little to, well, kind of 1.5 doctor practice in a little rural community halfway between Milwaukee and Green Bay to this great big 7 doctor practice in this great big building on the main thoroughfare, the road between Milwaukee and Green Bay. And we have clients that come from all over the country. So in our 7 doctor practice, it's about, yeah, including Debra, we do about 50% of our practice is devoted to canine reproductive services. That may be anything from fertility, infertility, high-risk pregnancies, neonatal care. So pretty much anything that involves genetic screening, all those things. So we do just about everything. Along the way, I ended up going to law school. I ended up writing a book at the same time that I went to law school, 25 years after I got out of veterinary school. Raised the 2 kids, went through 4-H, went through all the stuff you do with kids. It was awesome. Now I have a grandson. And so along the way, these things just kind of started to happen. And I then became president of National Animal Interest Alliance. I'm president of the Society for Veterinary Medical Ethics. I'm on the board for the American Vet Med Law Association. What else? We just were really busy. And then I got a job with Revival Animal Health, which is a company that supports breeders and rescue organizations with veterinary supplies, all done ethically. And I have the opportunity now to travel around the country and speak to many, many, many breeders instead of just a few breeders at a time in my practice. I now speak to groups of 600 breeders at a time. Many of them are commercial breeders. And I will honestly tell you, you would be shocked and delighted at how much of a change the commercial breeding world has evolved through in the last 10 years. So for those of you who have a preconceived notion about what commercial breeders are, I want you to have an opportunity to communicate with me, rethink this. I can show you pictures, I can show you information, but these people as commercial breeders are every bit as engaged in doing health screening as our AKC and competition breeders are now. So I'm really proud to say that they have made just huge strides, not only because the general public expects it, but because they want to produce a better dog. So that's—
So wait, we have to do our toast. I'm like, you're going on. Let's say, like, That's so funny. So let's do our toast so we can let Miss Debra jump in too, but let's go ahead and do our toast, my friend.
My toast is to healthy, predictable, well-bred dogs and to healthy veterinary students who can pay back their loans and enjoy practice.
Yay.
Cheers to that. That's fantastic. So when you all see me do this, they've all been given a time limit. So that's what that means. That's not me like counting anything, because we always promise to be efficient here. So Debra, let's jump over to you. Give a little background on your background in breeding, as well as you have a really amazing legal career as well.
Well, it's similar to Marty's, because I went to law school, graduated in '83, was an assistant district attorney, and a friend of mine had a Springer Spaniel who he had trained in obedience, and I thought that would be great. So I went through a rescue Irish setter who unfortunately had grand mal seizures and didn't live very long because of it. And then I got a backyard bred Irish setter that had champions in her 4th generation. So that was bred out of her pretty much. And as I was doing obedience with what I felt was the most beautiful Irish setter in the world, I was standing next door to the breed ring and saw these beautiful Irish setters and said, "Ooh, I'd like to do that. I could do that." So like Marty, I went to pick out a dog. I got to know a lot of the breeders. I stood by the ring, got to know a lot of the breeders, bought one from one of the top breeders in the East Coast. Owner handled her to her championship. It took 18 months because I kept ruining her. Not that she was not good. I would screw it up. But it was the most wonderful experience. I laughed when Marty said she went in for a pet and came out with a show dog. I have people calling me all the time, "Well, I just want a pet." And I said, "Well, you're very lucky. That's all I breed. That you can bring it into a ring and win is sort of icing on the cake, but I'd really rather have it on your couch, being happy, doing whatever it is you do as a family." So that was in 1983, 84, 85. I actually became very involved in the American Bar Association Animal Law Committee, the New York State Bar Association Animal Law Committee. And as many breeders know, the animal law committees are not necessarily committed to breeders. They're committed to adopt, own, shop. They think most breeders shouldn't really be around. So I'm one of the only breeders who gets out there and really talks to everyone about what responsible breeding is. And I wanted to applaud Marty for saying commercial breeding has come a long way. It really has. And if we all would just communicate with each other, it would make it easier. There's no hobby breeder on earth who can have enough litters to provide purebred dogs to the people who want them. So we really do have to nurture good commercial breeders. There's always the ones, and I always tell the animal law committees, you pass more laws, the deeper underground the bad breeders go. So you really need to nurture the good breeders. And that comes with a hand in hand with veterinarians who really help breeders know what they need to do, because they really, it's not that they don't want to do it. I don't know if Marty agrees with me. I don't think they know. So beside all of that, I'm the president of the American Veterinary Medical Law Association, and I'm also the legislative liaison for the Irish Setter Club of America, and I'm on the board of directors for the Irish Setter Club of America and for the Eastern Irish Setter Club. So being a breeder of 30 some odd years, having had 9 litters, I think that coming at this with Marty as the veterinarian will be a really interesting program for all of us.
So I love all this because now we can get into the conversation. I think we've got 2 amazing experts here. So Marty, let's start with you. I'm going to serve as moderator tonight and ask a few questions, then we'll open it up to the community as we go forward. But let's talk about why breeders are important today and how you view them in your practice. You clearly have grown your practice. 50% of your practice is with working with breeders, but let's talk about, because I think you made a comment, something like only you have a community of 700 people and you have as many veterinarians as you have, but let's walk through, why are they important today? What do they help us with?
Well, as Debra said, they're really important to keeping the purebred dog culture alive in our communities. There's a lot of commercial breeders who are breeding purebreds, but there are a lot that are breeding mixed breed dogs as well. But the American Kennel Club and the American public has a pretty strong tendency to like the purebred dog. And without people who are willing to do purebred dog breeding and willing to mentor and foster the pet breeder or the pet buyers, we aren't going to have the same kind of a community. When people buy a puppy from one of my breeders, they can go back to him and say, hey, I'm having a problem with this, or I need help with that. And is this a normal thing for this dog? And so our purebred breeders are willing to mentor people in a way that commercial breeders simply can't, because they're not connected in the same community. So it's really important. And the purebred dogs are, they carry traits that are desirable. They carry traits that are really predictable. And I think predictability is a significant piece that we need to talk about. When I get a dog, I know based on the breed I'm selecting what its characteristics are going to be, its behavior, its coat, its exercise levels, what they're going to act like, how big they're going to be. As I've gotten older, I appreciate the value of having a dog that's the size I want it to be. I used to have Bernese Mountain Dogs. I used to be able to carry a Bernese Mountain Dog down the hall if I had to. Yeah, I don't do that anymore. So as our clients change and their needs change, the predictability of having a purebred dog is really valuable in a way that we simply cannot predict what the mixed breed dogs and the rescue dogs are going to turn out to be like. To my practice, it has been life-changing, absolutely life-changing. And I have a whole crop of veterinarians that absolutely love working with breeders as an expertise in theriogenology.
So I think that's awesome. I think hopefully that's going to spawn some additional questions for others. But I think one of the things that I think is really interesting, Debra, is we've talked before that this is a hot topic. People have a lot of preconceived notions of what they believe a breeder is. I will tell you, when we started this session, meaning when I started promoting it, we got a lot of emails from people with their own preconceived notions. But what can you tell us about breeders that maybe veterinarians don't realize or understand, that we can start to build that bridge?
Well, I find that breeders usually look for veterinarians like Marty who are willing to collaborate with them. We've usually been in our breed a number of years. We have a really deep-rooted collaboration among other breeders to help each other understand what's better to bring forward. I mean, we have these breeds that we love that we breed for form and function, which means they're supposed to be able to do what they were made to do, not just look good walking around the ring. They're supposed to be able to go out in the field, my Irish setters, and run all day and find the birds. If they're pretty in the ring, but they can't do that, then you're not really moving the breed forward. And most veterinarians that I've dealt with recognize my passion for my breed and enable us to have a conversation. They have the degree on the wall. They do. If I don't feel as if they're able to give some of my experience credence, then possibly I'll move on to the next veterinarian. I actually have a veterinarian right now who not only do we work together on my litters, but if she has a question about another litter, she might call me because I have such a depth of knowledge about what to do if there's a puppy in trouble and things like that. She's not thinking she's the only one who has all the answers. She never does, which is what breeders like to do with their veterinarians. It's interesting. I had an experience with a vet once who actually said to me, this is what it's going to cost for me to, I had an older dog who had to be put to sleep. And if I come to your house, it's going to cost me this, and then I'm going to have to bring an assistant. It's going to cost you that, or you could bring it in. And we had a really good relationship. And when he started nickel and diming me, I said, I think that maybe we are going to not go forward after this, because if I ask you to come to my house to put my dog to sleep, believe me, whatever you charge me is fine. And maybe he had just had a really bad experience with an owner questioning his prices. But really, you have to know, as a veterinarian, you have to know your client. You have to know what they really want in their experience with their dogs. And as Marty said, when she sends her puppy, her people's puppies out, I mentor my people who have my puppies. Most hobby breeders do. Commercial breeders don't, but what we need to do as hobby breeders is to welcome those dogs into the fold as well. We can't, somebody will call me tonight and say, can I have an Irish setter puppy? I don't have a litter of Irish setter puppies. So if there's a good commercial breeder nearby, I can mentor them. They can get this dog. They'll have a great healthy puppy because they're really doing a lot of the health testing now. They might not be a confirmation worthy puppy, but then, they still love you. And you can still do all of I love that the AKC has done so many performance events now for dogs, so that the dog might not look like an Irish setter for confirmation purposes, but it'll still look like this beautiful red dog doing agility and rally and everything else. So we really need to mentor veterinarians. Thank you. We need to mentor veterinarians on how to speak to breeders and mentor breeders on how to speak to veterinarians. The ego sometimes gets in the way on both sides, and you really have to, one of you has to decide to listen first.
So with that, Marty, how have you been able to bridge that? I think let's get some really tangible experiences here of how to bridge that. It's a challenge.
Yeah, and one of the things I learned very early on is that my breeders knew a lot about their individual breeds and a lot about puppies. The breeders know exactly what's going on in their breed as far as the most up-to-date DNA testing, the kind of clearances that they should be having, how their puppies develop. We may see something in a puppy that doesn't look developmentally right to us, but they may know in their line that that's exactly how it goes and that it's going to self-correct. So I think that's an important piece. Everything I've learned about reproduction, nearly everything has come from learning from the breeders, learning from experience. And one of the most fun things about working with breeders is the relationship that we develop. We see these people sometimes 3 times a week. This is a way different relationship than you have with many clients in a regular veterinary practice that have 1 or 2 dogs, and you may see them 1 or 2 times a year. In these relationships, we literally see these clients sometimes 3 times a week. I had a client here today that was there for 5 hours yesterday and another hour today. And that's not unusual. So they're high demand clients. They have high expectations, but they're also willing to communicate. And one of the most fun things is when they come in and they say, this is what I want to do. And they have an exact idea in mind. And you have clients like this, even if they're not breeders, that have read it on Google and they know exactly what they want. But by the end of the conversation, we've been able to massage and manipulate and change and explain and educate and turn that conversation completely around so that what they started off thinking that they wanted to do at the beginning of the appointment has completely changed. One of the other things that my breeders are absolutely committed to doing is they love to have veterinary students come to their homes when they're whelping, come to the events when they're competing. And that may be anything from, like Debra said, agility and obedience to conformation, to nose work, to hunt tests, to field trials. I mean, there's a huge array, barn hunts, there's all kinds of events that are going on with dogs. And they want the veterinary students to be involved and engaged and see what they're doing and learn what they're doing and to mentor those students as well, because they want the next generation of veterinarians to be able to help them. AKC and the Society for Theriogenology has combined to develop scholarships for theriogenology residents. And that's a pretty unique relationship. I don't think there's any other specialty in veterinary medicine that has that kind of relationship across the specialty, the specialist, a foundation, and the AKC to develop these students into what we're going to need for our next generation of veterinarians.
So I'm going to take a pause really quick and see if there are any comments or questions or just overall observations from our community here, because I do have a list of more questions, but I want to be sure that I'm so excited. We've got Mia, we've got Carrie, we've got, Deb. And what I love is that we've got Diane with her cats. So she's trying to pull the cats forward. We've got to love Diane on this. So always bringing the cats, girl. So is there any questions that anyone has? Just unmute yourself and feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we will continue on. But Carrie, I see you unmuted yourself.
Well, I just had to comment on Marty's great observation about consistency. We've had purebred Chihuahuas, and we recently branched out. I don't know if you can see them, but got 2 puppies. We have no idea, except that this one's part Jack Russell and part Border Collie, we think. Who's still growing. Whoops, I don't know if I'm doing this right, but there we go.
Oh, that sounds like high energy.
Yeah.
So
Good luck with that.
Yeah. We got another one who the mother looked terrier dachshund. Whoops, but he looks Chihuahua. Her ears just finally went up. I don't know if you can see that one.
Oh yeah, yep.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So we just got her. So, but we have no idea really how big they're going to be, or what breed they are. We're gonna do the wisdom panel on them, but I haven't done that yet. And I have another third purebred or a rescue dog over here that has miniature dachshund toy fox terrier. But it is kind of a guessing game.
It's a Cracker Jack box. It's a treasure that you get out of the Cracker Jack box. You see what it is when it's finished.
Exactly. And the problem is this Jack Russell, I walk 4 to 5 miles a day, but that's not enough for him. He's exhausted. He's exhausted me. So I'm taking him to the ranch. My mom has a 4,000 acre ranch. So we did that with the last Jack Russell, who was very happy, lived 17 years out there. So luckily I have options, but this would certainly, this dog would be very frustrated. I mean, we were on an island, so I can walk with him, but if he was in a little apartment and somebody got a dog like this, you know, and had to crate him or do all that because of behavior issues.
A lot of noise and a lot of destruction.
Challenging, yeah, real challenging. So, so I appreciate the consistency comment, and I hadn't really thought of it that way. I just thought of more of people like dogs for their sporting or their what they want to do. I'm kind of molding myself, like I'm taking agility classes with him and stuff like that. So I'm learning some more stuff with him, but I do kind of, you know, I hope for some consistency with a little dog with this other little puppy. So I think it can be a problem, and you don't want, you know, after they go through socialization with you, you don't want, you know, you're going to keep them forever, but it may not be what's best for that dog either. So I really like breeders. I get a lot of pushback from vets. I think they think of the bad things that happen sometimes post-adoption, either from shelters or breeders. You hear that. So it's nice to hear from Marty about all the collaboration and the kind of evolution that's happening to uphold breeders as we go forward, and also help to digitize some of those interactions with the breeder and the veterinarian.
Well,
just as a point of disclaimer, she's all in the digitizing. So
exactly.
if records can be,
my brain is.
yeah, exactly. If we can get that, but you know, thank you so much, Carrie. And for those of you who don't know, Carrie is a DVM as well. So I want to make sure that we're sharing that. But let's talk about the impact of breeders. Let's dive into, like, you know, what is their value? What is their overall impact? So let me first start with you, Marty. You know, what impact does the profession of being a breeder have on veterinary medicine? Let's get to the really, you know, details here of why they're important.
Sure. And we kind of kiddingly say in our practice that clients don't look like their dogs, they act like their dogs. So you got to watch those terrier people, Carrie.
Well, I love Iona's dog. Cat. No, cat.
Oh, it's a cat. Come on. I have a grandkitty. I can bring her picture up.
Yep,
It's a purebred cat.
Yep, she's our feline practitioner.
It's a
What kind of
purebred
cat is
cat. They're Devon Rexes.
Okay,
Oh,
so
nice.
she's in the purebred world in a different place than we are. She's in the
Yes.
feline purebred world.
Yep.
And there's a lot of value in the feline breeders as well, again, with consistency and predictability. So I think that's really important. So the breeders have a lot of impact. They bring to the table high quality dogs. There's no breeder that I know that gets up in the morning and says, I would like to breed a dog with hip dysplasia and seizures. I mean, that just doesn't happen. So they're very careful with their breeding programs. They pore over pedigrees. They spend hours and hours and hours talking to people and figuring things out. And it's not about the beauty contest. As Debra said, it's about form and function. And really, when you look at the function of a dog, that tells you a lot about how they should be built, how they should be made, and what their ability is to perform their job. So frequently, we will see these dogs in much better health than we see in the dogs that are of the mixed breed varieties, because we've selected for specific traits that make them high performing dogs. So that's one piece of it. There's a lot of other pieces to it as well. What, Debra, why don't you jump in here?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I loved when you said before that breeders love to mentor both veterinarians and veterinary students. I know for a fact that the American Kennel Club has its Canine Health Foundation, which also underwrites research for purebred dogs, which of course spills over into all dogs, not just purebred dogs. But we can, because we're purebred breeders and we're worried about certain maladies that hit purebred dogs, we raise a great deal of money to foot the bill for veterinary schools to do research to try to find the cure for epilepsy, to try to find the cure for bloat if there is one, to try to, find, Irish Setter Club of America found the tests so that we can test for PRA, so we can clear our dogs without having to breed blind litters. And so the AKC has the Canine Health Foundation, and most purebred, and I'm sure the Corgis do too, I know the Irish Setters do. If you are an Irish Setter kid, if you go through and show Irish Setters and decide to go to vet school, or if you're, if you're going to vet school and you show an Irish Setter, you get a scholarship. All you have to do is apply. We love to pay or help pay the expenses of veterinary students because we know that it's a working partnership. The veterinarians, if they understand the Irish Setter, if they understand the Corgi, if they understand the Chihuahua, and the things that might affect them. I have a friend who has Bichons, and her cruciates keep slipping because that's just the way they're built, sort of, and their cruciates slip. So if you're a veterinarian or you're a veterinary student and you're working with a purebred dog club, you will learn all of these things way before you'll get to them in school, and you'll be so far ahead if you just sit and do a lot of listening for understanding. Because as Marty said, if you work hand in hand, the amount of things we see will either put your mind at ease or it's something that's of a concern to us because we've seen it before. And so it really alerts the veterinarians to things they need to be aware of in an Irish Setter, in a Corgi, or things that if they see it, okay, this is an Irish Setter, I'm going to keep an eye on it, but this usually goes away because I've had these, litters of Irish Setters with this person who told me, no, don't worry, this is going to go away. So I think that the ability to have breeders share all their information with veterinarians and vice versa works really for the benefit of everyone. And so for me, I think breeders bring a lot to the table that can be a benefit. And they just, as I said before, they just sort of have to put their ego a little bit away.
So aside from the impact to veterinary medicine from a medical perspective of uncovering an AKC and bringing these high quality animals, there's a bigger reason here, though, if from our discussions, and that is the idea of the demand for animals. So Marty, do you want to dive in and specifically talk about the fact that, we've got a 2.6 million, and I didn't compare them to your numbers that I sent out to everybody else, but deficit in demand for dogs. Sorry, Diane, it is dogs they were demand for, sorry.
Yeah.
But there's cats too. I mean, if you want a purebred cat, I'm sure the demand is the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And in the purebred dog world, we know from the numbers that are being shared, and there is information on a website, the Shelter Dog website from National Animal Interest Alliance, that we know most of the dogs that end up in shelters are not purebred dogs. That's not necessarily what's been discussed, but that's the reality of what the data shows. And National Animal Interest Alliance has a person who's a volunteer that works full-time to collect data for the dogs that are coming in and out of shelters. And the shelter medicine information is going to be on that website that we're going to share with you. But it does reflect that the majority of the dogs are not purebred dogs. In the shelters, they're either lab crosses or there's some kind of a pit bull terrier cross. And many times those don't make the kind of pets that people need, want, desire, can live with, can afford to have for a lot of different reasons. And the purebred dog community cannot provide the number of dogs that are under demand. And the concern is that there's going to be this huge deficit of purebred dogs that are available. The dogs that we cannot produce as hobby breeders and we cannot produce as commercial breeders are going to end up needing to be met from some other sources. And those are starting to look like either the illegal dogs that are being smuggled into the country across the Mexican border on private planes in a lot of different ways. Millions of dogs are coming into the United States without health papers, without health clearances, not being raised in suitable conditions, not being socialized adequately, bringing in zoonotic diseases, bringing in diseases that our dogs are going to end up with. We've had brucellosis come in, we've had rabies come in. There's just case after case that you can find that this is the case. And we're just not able to meet those demands. So the Eastern European countries, Korea, Mexico, the Puerto Rican area, those kinds of countries are not going to be raising the dogs with the health clearances, the socialization, and the health that we're looking for as the American public. So that's one concern. And I know I'm going to get bashed for this, but I'm going to say it anyway, that in our practice, when we see rescue dogs, and we see a lot of rescue dogs in our practice. First of all, clients somehow feel like that is their obligation, rather than, and as Catherine has said, she feels like she has to kind of hide the fact that she bought a purpose-bred dog, which I think is a shame that in this country that is now become something you need to apologize for. You feel like you have to pay penance and then take a rescue dog as well to compensate for that. But most of the dogs that we see coming in with behavior problems are dogs that came through rescue. We don't know what their genetics are. We don't know what their personal experiences have been. We can't understand some of the things that are going on. And I've just taken 2 one-week courses of behavior courses at North American Veterinary Conference. I did the 2 immersion courses last year and this year, and have gone through all the case studies and all the drugs and all the things that Karen Overall and Kirsty Siski can teach us. And of the 8 cases that we saw, 7 of them were rescues. And I think that's pretty representative. I'm not saying every rescue dog has an emotional problem, and I'm not saying all purebred dogs are perfect, but I am saying that we see a higher percentage of rescue dogs with behavioral issues that are much more difficult to deal with. So it becomes a big concern. Other thing that we as a dog club are really careful to do is when we go to events, we are careful to share with the restaurant, the hotel, the facility that we're having our competitions at, to share with them that we are here for the dog show, or we're here for the cat show or the reptile show or whatever it happens to be. But I think it's really important that the general public understands the economic impact that we have when there's a show with 5,000 people that attend, what the impact to the community is on that. And I think that's significant, and I think we need to recognize that and be more forthcoming with that information when we show up at these events.
So what I also want to point out, and I think you pivoted a little bit on me, but I still think it's all really incredibly valid, is when we talk about the dog shortage, it is a universal dog shortage. It's not the demand for breed dogs or shelter dogs. It's a universal shelter.
It's only going to get worse, Catherine, because of the adopt, don't shop, and spay and alter everything. You really are going to lose the gene pool, which will give you healthier dogs. The gene pool is going to shrink. And if every dog has to be altered and spayed when they're 6 months old, I think, I'm not a veterinarian, but I think Marty will bear this out. That has an impact on their maturity, because if they never become sexually mature, which you can let a bitch go into season, a female, sorry, go into season once, and then if you want to spay her, great. But the bone structure, everything, falls into place. I don't really, I don't allow anybody to spay or alter my dogs unless they absolutely have to. And I take my bitches back when they're in season if you can't handle it, because it isn't really that hard. If you'd like to spay and alter it, I tell you, well, you will have a woolly mammoth, because Irish setters turn into woolly mammoths after they're spayed. And as long as you're okay with that, and I know that's all that, stupid glitter and hype, but Irish setters are supposed to have a certain look. And if you spay and alter them, they don't look that way anymore. And I think, Marty, it's true. They've done research out at UC Davis that a lot of veterinarians want to spay and alter at 6 weeks of age, 8 weeks of age. Yeah, I know. Cover your eyes. So if you do that, even with mixed breed dogs, you are setting them up to not fully develop. And I think the veterinarians on this call will agree, maybe not. Please disagree with me if you want. Yes, they won't be bred, but yes, they may be more prone to getting different diseases down the road. So for me, the discussion between the veterinarian and the breeder needs to be open and above board. When I give my puppies to their new owners, I send them with a letter which says, this is my protocol. This is my shop protocol. This is my spay or alter protocol. This is, what I'd like you to do. And I then put a little piece of, acknowledgement at the bottom. And I said, Dr. Veterinarian, you can follow whatever protocol you want, but please sign this piece of paper saying you will refund the purchase price of this dog if it has an adverse reaction to the way in which you feel you should care for it, rather than the way I've asked the owners to care for it because I'm going to refund their purchase price if something happens, if they follow my rules. Because with Irish setters, the only dogs, well, I can talk about long-haired dachshunds too, because I have them. Oh, stop. I'll be done in a minute. So there's certain things that happen if you do something, if you multiply drug, if you multiply vaccinations. Irish setters have a really bad reaction to that. So I tell my owners, please tell your veterinarian to get separate ones. And a lot of them will say, do you know how much extra that's going to cost you? And I said, come back to me and I'll pay for it. And most of my owners go, no, we understand. And so they do. But it's, the rare vet who says, no, I'm not going to do it. And then I tell my owners, you have to have the guts and conviction to say, okay, sign this piece of paper that says you're going to give me my $1,500 back if my dog comes down with HOD. So anyway.
You make a lot of money when you sell puppies for $1,500, don't you?
Oh, every single litter. I could buy a house. Every time I have a litter of puppies, I could buy. My husband said that he could have had 2 or 3 boats for the amount of money I spent on litters of puppies. And if, I think, Marty, you'll bear this out. If you break even, you're lucky.
Yeah, the first puppy goes to the breeder that you got the semen from. The second puppy goes to the veterinarian. Maybe the third if it was a C-section. After that, maybe there's a little bit left over, but then you've paid for confirmation shows and all the travel and the other things that go with it. So yeah.
So I'm going to wrap us back to get us back on topic.
We are. This was a discussion about veterinarians.
The actual value of breeders. So I'm going to let the community jump in here a little bit because I do want to talk about, there's a big piece we've missed in this whole thing. It is the notion of that breeders have a huge impact on medicine. There is, as we have discussed on the Bridge Club previously, if you have not seen it, there is a dog shortage and we give all the numbers, and it's not based on whether it's a shelter dog or it is a full breed. It's across the board. We've got about a 2.6 million deficit in the demand for dogs, and what we're doing with that, and the fact that euthanasia has dropped by over 95%, and that's still not going to cover. If all the dogs in the world were never euthanized, that would in fact not cover the demand. So there's still another piece here, and Marty, I want you to talk about it because this is an area you're very passionate about, but I want the community to engage as well, and that is, what does this mean for the future of veterinary medicine? So I want to go back to the idea that if we don't have breeders, there may not be a demand for veterinary services.
Right. We're going to have a depletion in the number of dogs that are available to people. And in spite of the fact that I love cats and I think cats are great pets, if you want a dog, you want a dog because a dog goes jogging with you in a way that a cat just never will. So without those dogs, and the purebred dogs are not, they don't need more medical care. If I counted on all the purebred dogs to keep me in business because they're so unhealthy, that's just not true.
They're overbred, right?
Yeah, and it just isn't true. But without the number of dogs that we need, we're not going to have the dogs that are available for the general public. They're not going to be able to provide the care. And people tend to be more committed to a dog that they paid $1,500 for than a dog that they may have paid $200 or $300 for as a rescue, as a humane society dog, as a whatever. And I think it's really important that our veterinary students have the ability to get out of school, own a practice, pay their bills, pay their loans back. And these are the dogs that are really valuable to the public and that they are willing to spend the money and are committed to, so that our veterinary students, our new generation of veterinarians, are going to be able to manage their debt and their opportunities going forward. There's so many great things we can do in veterinary medicine. It just breaks my heart to see that we may not be able to make that commitment to our new upcoming veterinarians.
So I know you brought Brittany and you brought Adrienne with you. Do you guys have any comments about, your students looking in on this, and you're working with Dr. Greer? It's okay, you can point your head in on her side because I know you guys are off on the side, but I'd love to get your point of view.
I think you caught him way off guard.
Well, that's what the Bridge Club is all about. If you're going to show up, we got to talk a little, have a combo.
I think a lot of the problem comes from people not being as educated on the topic as they like, I know I am, because I have family members who breed German Shepherds, and then like my father and my stepmother, they just got a purebred mini Shar-Pei, and so like I see the effort like my family members personally go through. So like I know like when they come from a very reputable breeder that these dogs are very well taken care of, and they go through all like the health testing and everything. So I think the most important thing is that it's done responsibly. And when it's done responsibly, like they go to very happy homes with people who love them, and it really does like help the community, and like it's almost like a piece of like history too, if you think about it, seeing all these breeds working the way they are. So
Yeah. And we have long lists, purebred, as a purebred dog breeder, I have long lists of people that are waiting for puppies well before I have them. And like Debra said, you know, they call up and they say, I'd like a dog next Tuesday. And you're like, really? That isn't really how it works. But I have lists of people that wait over a year, over 2 years for the right dog, for the purebred dog. And then Brittany grew up on a beef farm, so she has a little bit of a different experience.
Oh yeah, so share with us, Brittany.
Yeah,
On a ranch.
everything I know is pretty much about cows and not dogs. So just the couple days that I've spent here, I've learned a lot so far about just a whole new world that I really never knew existed about dog breeding. So it's been good, and I look forward to the project I get to work on for Dr. Greer and what else I can learn about this new world.
Right. They're both here as part of the veterinary entrepreneurial academy that Robert has set up, that we found out about at VIS. So I've got them working on projects this summer.
Great.
So if anyone is not familiar with VIS, I highly encourage you to be a part of that. It is absolutely incredible. What about anybody else? I'm just curious because we are coming close on our time here. Any other comments, questions, statements? Oh, wait, here we go. We got from Victoria.
I guess when I think about it, I'm just wondering if either of you believe that like an increased cooperation between vets and just breeders from all walks of life would maybe even help with the problem of, you know, the bad ones, where, you know, because I think someone said it earlier in the conversation, where some of the problem is just born out of not knowing. Like, you know, it's kind of the crime of ignorance, of just not understanding that what you
Or
know.
the loudest voice, right? The loudest voice is being heard. You're absolutely right. I think that being able to encourage veterinarians and breeders to work together to understand each other is going to be the benefit for both of them. And as I said, sometimes ego gets in the way, but if you can mentor a veterinarian or a vet student, and then the vet student can carry that forward and know what they're looking at and going toward when they go into full practice, it's so important.
Yeah, when I was a vet student and early in my practice, the veterinarians I worked for said, oh, those breeders, they'll make you crazy. And I've actually found it to be completely the opposite. I love working with my breeders. They want the information. When I speak to the Amish and Mennonite breeders, they come into the room at 600 at a time, and they don't leave. They want the information. They're thirsty for the knowledge, and they really want to improve what they're doing. And unless we help these people, unless we improve their ability to breed great dogs, we're not going to have that next generation of great dogs. And we are losing our gene pools. It's really significant in the number of dogs that are dwindling. We've seen fewer and fewer dogs being registered through the AKC. I'm concerned about the semen that's being thawed out. I'm concerned about the inability to maintain some of the larger gene pools and the concerns with that. We work with otter hounds. We work with all kinds of people with really significant challenges to their gene pool. And we are responsible. We are the people that can make a difference in the future of these breeds.
The veterinarians are so key, and there should be, not from breeders and not from veterinarians, you know, the shame or blame of buying a dog from a Mennonite or buying a dog from a commercial breeder, because as Marty and I just said, we can't supply dogs because we don't have as many litters. And you know, the internet is a great thing and a horrible thing, because pirate, you know, Marty and my pictures to show you what a Corgi and an Irish Setter look like, but their dogs don't live in that situation. Well, what we want to do is, instead of, you know, complain and, you know, blame and shame people, we should say, are you willing, and we would love to help you to breed better dogs. Because if we can't meet the demand, because I'm not having litters every week because I'm too old, can I help someone else figure out how to have the healthiest dog they can have? and help them breed to healthier dogs so that their dogs become healthier, rather than just perpetuating, you know, to tell somebody they're a horrible backyard breeder or a puppy mill or whatever they are and just shut them down. Well, they're just going to open it somewhere else, and you haven't educated them. You've just shamed them. But if, as Marty has done a number of times, if you go in and say, I'd love to give you some information, would you be willing to, you know, listen to me? It doesn't mean you have to do it, but, and then Marty, correct me if I'm wrong, they do, they up their game so that their dogs benefit. And isn't that what we all want? We want the dogs to benefit and the cats to benefit.
Right.
So what I can tell you is I am very sorry, Marty, didn't mean to cut you off. Because I am watching the time very closely here, is I do hope this conversation continues. I do hope this is the first step. I feel like we owe the profession the opportunity to create the bridge. And this is not going to happen overnight. And I feel like this is going to be a conversation we have again and again and again, because we need to. I don't think that, you know, we can, and I'm going to use the word vilify, because I do feel as though breeders are vilified in this profession, and I don't think that it's necessary. I think that they are, if you get a breeder who is, as Marty says, doesn't wake up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a bad breeder today. I mean, everyone has the wellness of these animals at the forefront. Maybe I'm a little naive, but I hope not. So I am really hopeful that this is the beginning of a longer conversation and one that we can continue to have. I am beyond honored and thrilled that both Marty and Debra put themselves out there for this. I think that it is courageous, because it's not written up in any magazines. You know, when I did a search to say, hey, what articles have been written about the relationship? There's zero. It's like this undercurrent secret of you're just not supposed to talk about it. And I am so grateful. So from that perspective, I do want to see if there's, oh wait, so what are their opinions about the news online matching services? Oh, let's bring that one up. So Victoria has a great question. What are your opinion about the news online matching services between breeders and buyers?
Well, I didn't know about that.
I don't know what she means.
What are you talking about, Victoria?
So I've kind of seen it a few times just through work and other stuff, where like essentially what I've seen is they're online listings for dogs, but essentially they're like located in like 6 or 7 major cities right now. And, you know, there's like medical certificates guaranteed and things like that. And like they have their own set of standards, and they try to work hand in hand with the breeders to like understand how the dogs are being raised and under what conditions. But like, I think to me, I just see kind of a PR issue coming, because for me, it's just, I feel like it might be a hard sell to the public, where essentially it's, you know, you're scrolling through a website, you're looking at photos, like, yes, they have videos and stuff, but there's no in-person interaction with the breeders. And I don't know if, because just listening to you guys and listening to the questions answered, a lot of what you guys focused on was that interaction between breeder and buyer, and, you know, focusing on what the recommendations are and educating your clients. So I don't know. Yeah, that's where I was going.
So no. It's interesting you said that, because I know that the AKC at Westminster usually has this kiosk where you can plug in your lifestyle, and then it tells you what 3 breeds you should have, as opposed to looking at pictures and saying, well, this guy looks nice or that guy looks nice. Or it really is much more beneficial to know what the temperament of a typical dog is going to be. So you get that dog, if you're a couch potato, that's a couch potato. And if you run 100 miles, you know, you get the dog that's going to run 100 miles. And that goes to the next question, which is, do most dog breeders socialize puppies well? I think that most of the hobby breeders, because that's our life story, sleep in the whelping box for 2 or 3 weeks. So yes, we do socialize them. I do tons of, you know, touch testing, and we do the smart dog testing, and we have them on different types of gravel and whatever, so that they learn different textures. And then we bring them places, and it's a mix, because you don't want to bring a lot of people into puppies who are unvaccinated. So socialization to people who you don't know, but usually I will strip down literally and put new clothes on little children who are in my neighborhood and have them come in and play with my puppies, so that they will learn, little kids and big people. But yes, you know, as far as I know, and I'm sure that Marty has seen many more breed than I only see Irish setters and long-haired dachshunds, but we are maniacal about socializing our puppies.
This has been, you guys, this is awesome. We literally, this is the longest Bridge Club we've ever had. We've been very, very careful to keep our times very limited.
Sorry.
No, it's amazing. It's a good conversation. We're at 53 minutes. So I really do want any parting shots. If anyone needs to like have that dying question, you can put it in the side comment if you need to, but we are going to end with one little thing from, again, Tim Cook. Apparently I'm obsessed with apples, so we'll bring that here in a minute, but any parting shots?
I would say that the Amish and the Mennonite breeders have been financially incentivized, but have also been taught now to have their dogs socialized, to have their dogs housebroken, so that when they're done with being a breeder, that those dogs can then be found a new home. It's a whole different experience than what it was. So we're seeing huge changes, and it's partly because of the public demand, but it's partly because they're now being educated. So it really is about education.
It is.
Really about giving those opportunities to people. And until the veterinarians and the breeders work together, we're not going to continue to make inroads.
Right. Absolutely.
So you guys, again, huge thank you for the two of you. I owe you tremendously. You guys are both Bridgers, and I adore you for it. Had it not been for this platform, I would have not met either one of you. So I am just so blessed to have known both of you and that you guys took a risk on this conversation. So thank you. So I'm going to end with this final statement. So again, not because it's so relevant, Tim Cook just gave his whole thing on CBS. And they tried, and I actually do think the breeder-veterinary relationship is a little bit like Democrats and Republicans right now. And one of the things that they tried to get Tim Cook on in this interview was he talks to the White House. And kind of almost how dare he talk to the White House when all these other tech companies are not willing to talk to the White House. And his answer was quite simple. And his answer was, I don't necessarily have to agree, but if I believe in the notion that I don't like you, so I'm not going to talk to you, I am a part of the problem, not a part of the solution. And if I can actually be a part of the dialogue and be a part of the conversation, then I feel we can move this country forward. And so for that, I feel like that's very much a part of what this is all about. I'm not getting political on anyone. I just feel like the whole notion of being a part of the conversation, opening our eyes, opening our ears, and being able to understand both sides and see how we can build that bridge, because for heaven's sakes, it is the Bridge Club. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.